All quiet on the winter meetings front, at least with Shohei Ohtani. Let's bring in our buddy John Morosi, MLB Network insider. Continue coverage of the offseason news. Check out MLB Network's new documentary. It's on Hall of Famer George Brett tonight at 8 Eastern. All right, John, nobody said anything. Then Dave Roberts said something. Now nobody is saying anything. Where do we stand with what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do with Shohei Ohtani?
Dan, good morning. The rules of engagement on this one are pretty unique, to say the very least, my friend. It has been a surreal week in a lot of ways. Certainly, we had the big Juan Soto news last night, which I'm sure we'll get to later on. But it has been, as an insider, we, of course, pride ourselves on being able to get all the information and share it and get everything in real time as it happens. And I'll be honest, it's been tough. Shohei Ohtani is a very private person. We know that about him. He wants the free agency to proceed accordingly, but we're all here for this week and we want to talk baseball. We want details, and it's been challenging. I also think that any notion, that Dave Roberts in any way erred by acknowledging that there was a meeting with Shohei Ohtani, to me, is absurd. Dave Roberts, first of all, he's one of the best people and best managers that we've got in the sport. And second of all, he just merely acknowledged something out of professional courtesy to all of us. And if the mere existence of a meeting and or acknowledging it is in some way a violation of the code of conduct, I'm just not sure where we go, Dan.
Well, I don't think it was accidental that he mentioned it. That was the only thing that stood out. It felt like he wanted people. I mean, he could have shook this off. The Dodgers GM did. So that's what I was just curious. That is Dave confident with Ohtani? I was trying to maybe, I'm conspiracy theory and trying to read too much in it, but it did feel like Dave goes, hey, I want to be honest with you. If I had more questions, I'd say, well, Dave, while you're being honest with us,
right.
Where do you stand with this? When do you meet with him again? How much do you think it's going to cost to sign? I mean, I would ask a few other questions, but I wasn't there.
No, it's a great point, Dan. A couple things. Number one, I'm really privileged to be able to travel around the country a lot for MLB Network and work a lot of Major League Baseball showcase game telecasts. And Dave Roberts, I will say to you, is one of the most candid and honest and forthright managers that we deal with. And we deal with a lot of great ones. We are really fortunate to have a tremendous group of people that have this job across baseball that share insights into what they do every day. And even among that great group, Dave is among the best, if not the best at doing it. And I think that's important context here, to where he is just a very honest and genuine person. That's number one. But number two, to your point, if I follow along the logic, and I think it's a very good point that you raise, if the Dodgers coaching staff, let's say, wished to convey that while they are excited to have him, they want to have him, they have gone out of their way, as Dave Roberts did, to praise him, that also they've got a pretty good thing going already. They've got a couple of future Hall of Famers by the names of Freeman and Betts who are in the lineup every day. They've got the future Hall of Famer in Kershaw, who they expect to potentially have back at some point in time during the year. So if a person wanted to convey subtly to Shohei that certainly, while he will be able to come in with some things that he wants to do a certain way, there are some things the Dodgers have done and will continue to do apart from him that will continue, that may have been a very subtle way of acknowledging the great culture and protocols that already exist with the Dodgers.
How many teams realistically are in play here?
I believe the final group, as it has been issued to say you're welcome to have an in-person conversation and putting it all together. The Dodgers, we know, have had an in-person meeting. The Blue Jays and Giants reportedly have as well. The Angels have not been eliminated yet either. And the Cubs have pushed back, certainly, against any notion that they've been eliminated. So I think we probably have a big five, to borrow the basketball term here. I think we've got a big five of teams that are still left. And I'll say, Dan, just being here in Nashville this week, I've still heard a lot about the Dodgers. They're still, in my mind, the favorites. But the team I've heard the second most is the Blue Jays. And I really believe Toronto has it may be a surprise here, but I think they have a compelling case to be made. They've got a beautiful state-of-the-art, Dan, one of the nicest sports facilities I have seen in my life of any sport is what they've got right now in Dunedin, Florida. And we know that Shohei visited there earlier this week to see for himself. So Shohei being a process-driven person, someone who's enamored with the concept of constantly improving and finding new ways to reach your potential. The Jays have built a place like that. And of course, we know Toronto's a world-class city in and of itself. If he wants to surprise people, and he always has been someone, Dan, who has surprised people. The Angels were a surprising pick. The mere role that he's always had in baseball is against the norm. He likes to surprise, and the Jays would be a surprise.
Oh, John Morosi, MLB Network insider, joining us. Yeah, I find it fascinating, but I also, the price tag for him. And it's not my money, but watching others, if you're going to spend $500 million, $600 million, you don't even know you're getting if he's going to be a pitcher or not. Is there a way that, and maybe this would take a team out of this, but let's say you said, we're paying you $40 million to be a hitter, and we're going to give you $1 million for every start that you make as a pitcher?
That's a great question. There could be, and I would say this, you're certainly on the right track in the way that incentive clauses work in baseball contracts, because you can never incentivize wins or home runs, performance like that. That kind of performance is not put into contracts, but they do allow games played, starts, plate appearances, that sort of thing. Okay. It's my belief, Dan, that the market for him is so robust that he'll probably be able to get everything fully guaranteed at the number that he wants to be without having to have these make good elements of the contract. And the big thing that I wonder, and Dan, where I think it gets incredibly frightening for some teams, is if there is the opt-out clause put in, which we have heard about so much as a way of giving the player leverage again. Well, if they do that, then the team assumes all the risk on what is an inherently risky endeavor. An 8-year contract, 10-year contract for a pitcher in and of itself is perilous based on all the actuarial tables that exist in baseball. But he's now had 2 Tommy John surgeries, Dan. And even when you look at pitchers who have remained relatively healthy through their careers, when you start to get towards their mid to late 30s, you can't really count on 200 innings anymore. And I think that ends up becoming an even greater concern for any team that were to sign Shohei Ohtani.
What did the Yankee-Padres trade signify for both of these organizations yesterday?
Dan, I actually love this trade for both teams. The Yankees had to get back, as my colleague Joel Sherman said, their identity. And this is a team, this is the team of Ruth and Gehrig and Maris and all these classic left-handed power hitters, Reggie Jackson, and yet they finished second to the bottom in the American League this past year in home runs by lefties. It's almost impossible to believe that, Dan, but that's true. And so you needed to have that lefty slugger to balance the middle of the lineup with Judge. Obviously, they've already got the reigning Cy Young winner in Garrett Cole, but they just did not have enough consistency and reliability with their lineup. It is, Dan, there is a really interesting part of this, which is perhaps we're going to now see Aaron Judge playing more and more center field, which is not the easiest position on your body. He can do it and actually likes it, but is it the best thing for him to be able to stay healthy in the long term? That's the Yankees' question after their own franchise contract that they gave Judge a year ago. And then for the Padres, certainly it is a pivot from a standpoint of their payroll. It's going to be lower. They tragically lost their owner, Peter Seidler, within the last couple months. I think it's a pivot for their franchise to a lower number and a different level of spending. But they believe, Dan, that they can still compete as long as Tatis and Machado and Bogarts have seasons like they've had in the past, and then they bring in a lot of pitching from the Yankees to fill out what's been a pretty thin rotation as the season has ended.
All right. We played the game yesterday with Ohtani, where he goes. We also did the price. Todd, you piggybacked mine. I said the San Francisco Giants. Seton, you said where Ohtani ends up?
Staying with the Angels.
All right. Marvin?
Dodgers.
All right. Paulie?
Dodgers 565.
All right. So, John, not as a reporter, can you just be like, John calling into the Dan Patrick Show?
Sure.
Where do you think Shohei Ohtani ends up?
John calling in from Michigan, friend of the show. I'm going to agree with Paulie. I'm going to say Dodgers at 565. I think that was a very, very good number. Strong prediction. They're still the favorites until someone proves otherwise. But the team, again, that I think has the second best chance right now to get him is Toronto.
John in Michigan doesn't know anything if he's agreeing with you, Paulie.
Fair point.
Yeah. What is he doing? What is he doing? Good luck there, John. Thanks for joining us as always.
Thanks, Dan. Happy holidays to everybody. Thanks so much.
You too. John Morosi, MLB Network Insider. They have the George Brett documentary tonight on MLB Network at 8 Eastern.